everyone, in today's video I'll be showing you how I painted this black cockatoo using acrylic paints. Now this was a sketch I did from my reference photo just to get a feel of the subject matter in my sketchbook, and then I painted my entire canvas with 2 layers of acrylic paint, black acrylic paint, and then I just used a chalk pencil just to draw in the entire cockatoo, basically indicating where the feathers are, the shape of the feathers, the beak, the eye, just to get everything in its correct placement and get the proportions correct. Now the reason why I'm using a chalk pencil, you'll see it looks a bit messy. You can see there's chalk smudges everywhere, but the good thing about using chalk is that if you just take a little water and once I start applying the paint, you will see that it just disappears and you're not going to see any of those smudging of the white chalk. It's basically going to disappear once I start working on the actual painting. So that's the reason why I use the white chalk. Only thing, when you're working, try not to rub it with your hand or with the side of your hand, because it can smudge and you lose your sketch and you'll have to redraw it because it is chalk. It is going to wipe off. So once I've got the entire sketch of the cockatoo on my canvas, I start layering in the paint colors for the eyes. Now I started working with just to get a base coat of brown on the eye, and then just to start with the area around the eye as well as around the beak area. We just want to get base layers in. There's going to be some really ugly stages in this painting, but as you keep on working layer upon layer, you can build up the layers to create the more realistic and give it a more three-dimensional look as well as more realism too. So you can see I'm just going through a layer upon layer of paint. I'm using various colors. The beak has got some peach colors, a slight hint of brown, grays and white. I'm being careful not to use pure white paint. I'm using a slight bit of white in my peach color as well as some gray tones as well. I'm also trying to keep some of that underpainting of the acrylic, which actually shows through a little bit here and there, and that's fine with me because that actually gives more depth and it helps to create the layering process. It helps that to create that realistic look. So bear that in mind when you're using a background that's got a color that's showing through as you're applying the paint, because I am applying the paint translucent. It's very translucent, the paint that I'm applying. I'm adding a bit more water. I don't want it too opaque because I'm trying to blend it out and then layer in the colors and build up the texture or the colors of the beak. Now at this stage I'm just looking at trying to get the basic areas down, starting to add some of the shadow areas in, but I'm not looking too much at trying to get it too perfect. At the beginning stages you just need to basically place everything out like a map, and once it's laid out, then you start putting in the details. So now you can see I'm starting to work on the eye. I did add the little highlights on the top of the eye to give that shine, which is not also pure white. It's got a hint of gray in there as well. And also I'm starting to lay in different color browns. I'm using some reddish browns, burnt sienna, some raw umber as well as some burnt umber, combinations of them just to create that depth of the eye and create those different colors, because the eye has got shadows in it, there's light reflecting on it, there's lighter areas where the light hits the eye. Apart from the highlighted part of the eye, you'll see there's lighter browns which need to bring that to bring the eye to life basically. So I worked on the eye a little, and then now I'm gone back to the beak. So it's a going from here to there. I'm working all over the place. Like I said in previous videos, I always say, if you get bored of an area, or if you're tired of working on an area, or it's not coming right, move on to something else, work on that, and then come back to it. Or take a break from it. If you don't want to paint anymore and you're frustrated, it's not looking the way you want, you haven't ruined anything, leave the painting, do something else, come back after a while or even the next day, and then work on your painting with fresh eyes. You'll see things better and you'll have even better ideas that you may come up with now once you're looking at it with basically new refreshed eyes. So don't ever think that you spoiled the painting. Just keep working on it and keep putting more and more layers and building up the image. Remember, with acrylic paints, the good thing is you can just paint over if you make a mistake and start again. So what I did over here now, I basically just put in a base layer of Payne's Gray just to cover all the areas where the feathers are going to come. And then now I started working on the actual texture of the feathers. This is still not completed. I am going to work on it far more layers, and I'm going to start toning down this color because you can see as it is, I did tone down that Payne's Gray and added some shadow areas, as you can see in the center from his eye. That area is a bit darker, and then the areas on the outer parts of his feathers, those feathers are lighter. And now I am adding some of the textures of some browns and some purples as well. Remember, I'm not, even for the dark areas, I'm not going to completely let that background only show through. I am going to start adding some details onto that black areas as well between the feathers to create that depth. So that I'm going to be using some black with some purples as well to get that depth look. I'm not going to just leave it plain black as it is. It's going to be a combination of Payne's Gray, black, purple, just to get that depth of the look, or the depth of the feathers. I don't want the background just to be flat like as it is at the moment. We are going to work on that going through the painting as the process continues throughout the video. So now you can see I'm using various brushes from my filbert to a round brush. I'm just trying to get that feather effect, and I see that works very well with the filbert. You can get some nice feather effect, and then I'm also going to tone that down. You can see now I'm starting to tone down that very light colors. I'm starting to add some different tones and different shadow areas, leaving those a little darker. And then, yeah, as you can see now, I'm starting to like really define those shadow areas. And then also making sure that I keep the highlighted areas light as possible. But I'm also trying to create more texture for the feathers and create more depth and make it look like this bird has got a lot of feathers. You must be able to see them overlapping one another, the shadows as they overlap, the highlight where the light is hitting the painting or the bird. So in this case, the bird, where the light is hitting the bird. Now or hitting the bird's feathers. Then it reflects on the feathers, and then you have the light highlighted areas. Now I'm just going through and adding those little spots that he's got on his feathers all across his face. I am going to come through later on and refine these little dots. This was just the initial layer. Remember, I don't want them to stand out too much. I am keeping it subtle, but you must be able to see it. So once again, I'm starting to refine those shadow areas between the feathers as the feathers overlap one another. That's what creates more depth and makes your painting more realistic, or your subject more realistic looking. So another tip to remember when you're using acrylics, if you do happen to put a color that's not correct or a bit too dark, if you immediately take a little bit of water with a brush or with your finger, dab it onto that area and immediately wipe it off with a paper towel, you will remove that paint and you can repaint it. But provided that you don't, it's only one area. If the entire area is wet and you paint it wet on wet, you're going to smudge it in there. But if you just got one spot that you need to clear up, or it's not looking very, it's not the right color, or whatever the reason is, you just can use a little bit of water. I usually put my finger with a little bit of water or a brush, just put it on the area, and then I immediately wipe it with a paper towel. But you just got to work quickly because acrylic does dry fast. It depends on how thick the paint is, as well as how much water you've used when you're applying the paint. But that usually helps to fix little mistakes, or if you put the wrong color. Good thing acrylic, if you did put the wrong color, you can also just paint over it. But if it's in a place where you know you don't want to redo that area, then you can just use some water and wipe it off with a paper towel, with a clean paper towel. Now again, I left the feathers and I moved on to the beak, just defining it and refining the edges and the highlights and the shadow areas. I am going to come through again and work on the beak again. but I'm just basically trying to just get as much of the different textures and colors onto the beak according to my reference photo. Remember, as I'm working, I'm looking at my reference photo and I'm paying close attention to what the reference photo shows me with the values and with the different colors, the highlights and the shadows. You can see again, I'm gone to the shadows of the feathers. And now what happened here was I was not happy with the black background. The black background was basically competing with the bird itself, and it just did not look complete having that black background because I wasn't able to judge the shadow areas on between the feathers. I wasn't able to judge the shadows as the feathers overlapped properly because of the background. It was too overpowering with the black. So I went on and layered in some blue, teal, turquoise, and a bit of white, and even some phthalo blue, just to create a gradient effect. You would have seen it in the final piece that from the bottom of the cockatoo at the bottom it is back in the background. You'll see it goes darker at the bottom, and as it goes onto the top, it gets lighter, and there's also hints of turquoise and a sort of a blue-green sort of color in between. I left some of the brush strokes to show just to create that texture for the background. I know often I like to have a smooth background, but in this case I saw that it was looking good with the brush strokes showing. I did do multiple layers, as you can see. It's not a single layer. Remember, we're covering black, so you're going to need multiple layers. As well as you will see that now I'm starting to, basically when I painted the background, I usually paint the background and then I do the subject of my painting, the animal or whatever it is, the subject is, I draw that after I do the background. This time I had to correct the background now after I've already drawn the or painted the bird. So now I'm just going and refining those edges of the feathers that I covered over with the paint. It was a bit difficult to try to go through each feather and try to define the line and go around it with the background. So I had to go over part of the bird, and then now I'm just going through and I refine those feathers that are sticking out, and I just got that shape of layering the black in a couple of layers, and then I start defining those highlighted areas with the highlights of the feathers, and also trying to get that little bit of that blue from the background onto the bird as well. Because remember, some of that background, if you carry it onto your subject matter that you're drawing, it gives that sort of a look that it's all part of one piece. Otherwise, the bird looks separated from the background. You want him to blend into the background. So try to incorporate some of your background color. Like in this case, I incorporated the blues and the teals into his feathers as well. As you can see from the edges, I'm just adding some highlights, streaks here and there, just to bring him into basically into the environment and let him be part of this painting and part of the background. The edges of the canvas were still black at this stage. When I was done with the painting, I did paint over the entire edge of the canvas using the teal blue and the phthalo blue and the turquoise colors and the blue-green colors. I used the same colors that I used for the background. I just went through and painted the entire edge of the canvas. I had to do 2 layers to cover the black completely, and just retain that black area where the bird is to go down, just to keep it dark, that area, because the bird is there. I'm not putting details on it, that area, just painted it black, and then the rest of it I painted blue. I did go for all those little spots of yellowish, goldenish color. I went over those sort of a yellow ochre color. I went over those areas with another layer, and then I'm just going through again with the beak. Remember, I'm refining that edge of the beak because obviously painting with the background, I did lose some of that sharp edge of it, that curve. So I needed to refine that. And then just once again adding some of that blue to the beak and to the face as well, just to get that background and get the bird into the background and make him a part of the painting and not be separated from the background. Otherwise, he just looks like I took him and I stuck him on the blue background. So I guess that's it for this video. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you've enjoyed it. If you have, don't forget to like and share. Feel free to comment below and don't forget to subscribe. Till the next one. Bye.